White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt says he's part of a unified team working to implement common sense solutions. She also defends a Musk threat of possible termination for workers who don't answer a demand for information, though the Office of Personnel Management has signaled it considers that voluntary, not mandatory.
All the Office of Personnel Management is asking, all this administration is asking, President Trump is asking, is for federal workers who live off of the American taxpayer's dime to send 5 bullet points of what they have done in the previous week.
Leavitt says Musk will be part of the first Trump cabinet meeting tomorrow. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer.
Over the last month in office, President Trump and Senate Republicans have not focused on lowering prices or making life easier or better for American families. In fact, they're doing the total opposite.
Democrats call GOP budget proposals a betrayal as a framework for the Trump agenda moves toward a House vote. It includes an extension of the 2017 tax cuts and more than $1 trillion in spending cuts. The White House just announcing that Amy Gleason will be the new administrator for Musk's Department of Government Efficiency. She's a top Musk advisor and a former official at the U.S. Digital Service. More than 20 civil service employees who had worked for that same Obama-era office resigned today from DOGE, saying they refuse to use their technical expertise for what they call a dismantling of critical public services. The White House not confirming reports that the U.S. and Ukraine have reached agreement on a draft deal for U.S. access to Ukrainian minerals, and the Ukraine's president now plans to travel to Washington Friday to meet with President Trump. Another mixed finish on Wall Street, the Dow up 159 at the bell. America is listening to Fox News.
Someone had a birthday.
Yep, 50. Can't believe it.
50 years of wisdom.
Great segue. We have health news, a CDC update.
Pneumococcal vaccination is now recommended for adults 50 or older. Says here, we're over 6 times more likely to be hospitalized with pneumococcal pneumonia than adults under 50.
I don't love those odds.
Same. Look what I found. Pfizer's Prevnar 20 is proven to help protect adults against pneumococcal pneumonia and invasive pneumococcal disease in just 1 dose, and millions have already gotten it.
Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you have a severe allergy to its ingredients. A weakened immune system may lower your response. Common side effects include injection site pain and swelling, fatigue, headache, muscle, and joint pain. For full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138. Visit Prevnar20.com or talk to your doctor or pharmacist.
I'm on Prevnar20.com now, scheduling my appointment.
Good idea. And happy 50th.
Iran, Russia, the Middle East, all on the radar at a House hearing on emerging threats around the world, also focusing on China.
After Chinese hackers infiltrated American law enforcement and national security communications, we were told to use end-to-end encryption on our phones. Retired Navy captain, now senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation, Brent Sadler, told the Oversight Subcommittee when it comes to China, he hopes we learned a lesson from our handling of Ukraine and are getting Taiwan the kinds of weapons it needs to defend itself.
Beijing does count bullets, they count missile tubes, they do count all of these things in their military-to-military balance. It's the easiest, most cost-effective way to avoid what could be the most destructive war that we've seen since we became a nation.
He told the committee we're moving out of a gray zone with China into something more confrontational after they were caught yet again cutting underwater communications cables to Taiwan. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
The FAA investigating a runway scare at Chicago's Midway Airport. A Southwest Airlines flight just touching down for a landing earlier today had to pull up because of a private jet moving across the same runway. A change of plea hearing for the woman accused of a scheme to defraud Elvis Presley's family.
At a court hearing in Memphis today, Lisa Janine Finley told a federal judge that she wanted to change her plea to guilty. The Missouri woman is accused of an elaborate scheme to auction off Elvis Presley's iconic Graceland estate by falsely claiming the late singer's daughter, Lisa Marie Presley, had pledged the property as collateral for a $3.8 million loan prior to her death in 2023. Finley allegedly threatened to sell Graceland to the highest bidder unless Presley's survivors paid a settlement of nearly $3 million. A judge stopped the auction after Elvis's granddaughter sued.
Fox's Jonathan Seri. Finley could have faced up to 20 years in prison at trial. Prosecutors now set to recommend less than 5 years. Again, the Dow up 159, but the NASDAQ drops 260 points. I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News.
Hello again, everyone. Let's check weather for East Central Illinois, Champaign-Urbana and vicinity. As expected, unseasonably mild weather yesterday continues on for the next few, and just the first in a string of fast-moving, mild and weak Pacific weather systems on the move. A little glance at some rainfall on the overnight hours to the north and east of us. Secondary system due in for the day tomorrow, and a third feature due in as we move on through the upcoming weekend. That as well appearing to be a drier one, but there'll be a modest downturn on temperature readings, particularly over the back end of the weekend, but no cold air in sight or even seasonal temperatures in sight. In the meantime, sunny to partly cloudy skies, light west-northwest wind turns southwest late in the day, 58 the forecast high. We'll bottom out tonight with increasing cloudiness down to 36 tomorrow. A little drabble of rain in the morning, perhaps more likely in the afternoon tomorrow, and a high to about 57. Gusty south-southwesterly winds will bottom out at 35 tomorrow night. Partly sunny, 51 Thursday, 55 on Friday. Highs with dry weather into the 40s for the weekend. For Stevie G Broadcasting, I'm meteorologist Greg Solier.
Hey, what's up? It's the Drive with Sam Piper, ESPN Radio 93.5. Derek Piper, Kyle Tosk with you today, getting you set. Illinois and Iowa tonight, 8 p.m. tip-off at State Farm Center. FS1, if you're watching at home, Brandon Gaudin, Robbie Hummel on the call. And I don't want to be hyperbolic here, Kyle. I think everybody's on the same page with this. And there's more time left in the season beyond tonight. 2 more regular season games at Michigan, home against Purdue. A Big Ten tournament over there in Indianapolis to be played, but this really feels like a must-win for Illinois. And you're 17-11, easiest game left on your schedule. You're a near double-digit favorite. Ken Pom says you should win by 11. I don't know that anyone's feeling that confident, but this is it Judgment Day? Do you really want to dance? If so, show me. Whatever it ultimately is, the Illini need a win against the Hawkeyes, and if they get it, they should be in the field, regardless of what plays out the rest of the way. They'd be at least an 18-win team with 6 quad 1 wins, and you avoid any real blemish bad losses the rest of the way, I would imagine. Both Michigan on the road, obviously, and then even the Purdue game, if you were to lose, it would be a quad 1. But, man, this fan base needs some kind of encouragement, needs some kind of reason to believe again. And this team needs some feel-good and some confidence back. And will they get it tonight? We'll give our predictions as we go along and break this whole thing down. So how you feeling, Kyle, as we're about ready to really find out what this team still has left?
I'm interested to see. I'm a little uneasy about it. This game was never supposed to be the biggest game of the season. That was not supposed to happen. Here we are. Why is it always Iowa that it feels like it? Like the biggest game at home of the season always feels like Iowa. Of course, some of the past ones were to win Big Ten titles or secure double byes. This one is maybe to make the tournament. So it's a little bit different this time around. Why do I feel like last year's Iowa game felt like very important too? Is that coming off of?
It was off of the road loss at Penn State.
That's what I thought. See, I felt like there was some well, this will be interesting to see. It's always Iowa. And Illinois, to their credit, has taken care of Iowa quite well here recently. Are they on a win streak over the Hawkeyes?
I think they've won the last 2. They've won 4 straight in Champaign.
Okay, they lost that game 22-23 in Iowa City, right? Other than that,
yes,
though, Illinois had their success against Iowa. That, again, you look at this Iowa team, they're missing Owen Freeman. They're horrendous defensively. So even for a team that has shot it terribly, you might not need to shoot it tonight. That's something I'll be very interested to see what the volume looks like, because if you look at this matchup, you should be able to dominate the paint. If you're Illinois, get whatever you want at the rim. If that's not happening, I'll be concerned. But just the vibes heading into this game tonight, they're not great, and you need to see something on the floor. For me personally, the first 4 minutes of the game up to that under 16 timeout of the first half is going to tell me everything, because I'll be able to see if this team still has life inside of them. To be honest with you, coming off that Duke game, I'm a little concerned that it's a lifeless, dead team. I need to see otherwise to ensure that that's not the case. there's the potential for that to happen just when you get beat that badly and it's such a demoralizing loss. Now, of course, it's Duke, and it's hard to recover after they, Cooper Flagg and those guys get going. But I need to see a team early in the game that feels like there's some urgency there, there's some fight there, and a fast start in this one to really get that building back on their side. Because like Stevie was just saying, like, there's going to be a salty crowd in there, especially if Iowa goes up early in this game, and it's just going to feel really tense, and you don't want to put yourself in a position where that's going to be the case.
Yeah, the pressure will mount if it's a close game or if you're chucking threes again and they're not going down. Any struggles will lead to just an anxious crowd at the very least,
yes.
If you're lacking the kind of effort and intensity that people expect from a team that should feel like their backs are against the wall, should feel like they're playing for their season. If that is lacking throughout, say, the first half and you're jogging off into the locker room, then it could get even worse than just an anxious crowd, but a flat-out unhappy one, and one that will make you be able to hear exactly how they feel. But hopefully you get off to a fast start, hopefully returning home. And not to say that Illinois has struggled throughout their time here in the friendly confines. Maybe you'd wish they were a little bit friendlier. Yeah, it's more so like kind of the biggest games, the toughest challengers that come to town. You wish you could knock off a few more of those at a higher rate. But, yeah, this Iowa team, like we just said, they've come here the last 4 times, and you've been able to beat them. Last year was a pivotal stretch for the Hawkeyes, who were trying to sneak their way into the NCAA tournament. They had 2 games, then their last 4 or 5 in the Big Ten against the Illini, and they needed to win at least one of those, and Illinois beat them twice to really nail home the fact that they were not going to make their way in. Of course, you had the Big Ten title clincher there in 2022. You beat them during the COVID year here, which was, I think, a top 10 matchup. Both teams, I think, were in the top 10. Luka Garza and Wieskamp, Bohannon on one side, obviously Io, Kofi, Trent on the other, and then you beat them, Kofi Coburn blocking Luka Garza at the end of the 2019-20 season. So will this be the last time Fran McCaffery trots an Iowa team in here? That's one question you can ask, just based on where things are going for him and some questions what his long-term future ultimately looks like. But obviously the biggest story is Illinois trying to save their season. It is surreal that we're having this conversation based on where we were all looking just a couple of weeks ago, even through a rough patch and injuries and illness. Like, all right, well, they'll find their way through, and they'll still be a team you don't want to see in the tournament if you're a team in their bracket and so on and so forth. And now it's like, I even scoffed at it. I thought people were just being way too overreactionary or just letting some frustrations out. Like when they asked, are we sure Illinois is making the tournament? I was like, they'll make it. Come on. Like they're getting in. And I still think they're getting in. But boy, you need tonight. Yeah. I just don't. I was looking up bracketology today, and Joe Lunardi's now joined the pack, and it's pretty much a consensus now. They're in that 8-9 game. And there is that red arrow next to Illinois' name, and lose this one, and you're down another seed line. You'd think, as far as that goes, and I would imagine that you lose the Michigan game. Now, is there a realm of possibility that you lose this game and then pull one out of a hat at Ann Arbor? Technically, yes, but I think everybody would be highly skeptical of that happening.
I think if you lose at home to this Iowa team, I don't think there's anything left in Illinois. Like it feels like a team that's just coasting to the finish line, trying to end the season at that point. Now you got Michigan playing for a Big Ten title. You got Purdue, who's dominated you, and they're playing for a lot. And Big Ten tournament, you're probably playing a bubble team that needs to win just like you do. So it's just, you need this one because this is the one that is very gettable.
The most gettable.
But like you said, when you were going through the schedule early in the season, this was supposed to be your break. This was supposed to be like that one game little like, Iowa at home. Look at this gauntlet stretch to end the year. Michigan State, Wisconsin, Duke, Purdue, Michigan. But you got that Iowa game. We'll get, that's a home win. We'll take care of that one. Now this is the one that you circle and are like, this is the game. This is the have to have it, better show up. And I'll tell you what, it's felt to me this year just kind of watching a little Iowa that Fran's on his way out. There almost feels like there's an energy around Iowa, like they're trying to give it one last shot around Fran. He had like one moment after that. I think they beat Rutgers maybe it was, where he got emotional in the post game and the players kind of like mobbed him, and it feels like that might be
Like
the
this
case.
is it, yeah.
This is it, and they're trying to, at least make the Big Ten tournament and try to show some life there to send him out. They're going to be ready to play and try to beat you tonight. They're going to play hard. So you got to match that, and you got to be ready for a team that when they're going, they can score as many as they want on you. This isn't just a game like, boy, you'd have to play the worst game possible to have any chance to lose in this. No, Iowa, they can score with anybody in the country. So if you don't show up and defend, it's going to get very dicey pretty fast.
No doubt. Yeah, I want to ask you and talk about a little bit what makes Iowa at least a threat to come into your building and win tonight. How scary are they? I mean, it is a team that you're looking at them. They're 15-12. They're 6-10 in Big Ten play. On paper, they're not very scary, other than they do, as they always do, have a offense that can put up a lot of points and certainly shoot the ball at a really good level with Peyton Sanford and Josh Dix, who are two really good scorers at the guard wing spot. And yeah, the Rutgers game was a week after Illinois went to Rutgers and got handled, and then Iowa, surprisingly, not that it was some kind of huge expectation that Rutgers was going to go on this big run, but they got Harper back. They look like, all right, they're going to take a crack at this thing and maybe try to make an improbable run into the postseason, even if it is the NIT. And then Iowa goes to their building and beats them by 10. And they played close in terms of some other games that they were unable to finish off. They battled Purdue and Iowa City earlier this month and ultimately lost at the end down the stretch. And they had 50. They put like 51 points on Maryland on the road like a week ago, and then they got just absolutely demolished in the second half. They lost by like 30, but they were up like 51-47 at half, and then got outscored by something just ridiculous in the second half. But that speaks to, I think, even with Owen Freeman, this is a bad defense, especially in the inside. And absence him, they're playing an undersized lineup up front. And I was looking through their analytics. You were hammering it home yesterday about how bad their rim defense is. It's literally the worst in high major around the country. Mm-hmm. If you look at they're giving up like 33 points a game at the rim, which doesn't include post-ups. They're letting teams shoot like 63% at the rim against them. They just are a team that has no answer for you if you get the ball to the paint. And hopefully Illinois takes that lesson very strongly tonight and gets that thing done.
Now, the issue is, if you dive into Illinois' defensive analytics over the last month or so, they're very comparable to Iowa's in a lot of areas. And that's what scares you about this match. That's what makes this a very losable game. I think Illinois, matchup-wise, on paper, at home, you should win this game. It's not a team that should scare you. But in Illinois' recent form, almost any team should scare you. I mean, you got to be better, especially on the defensive end. The shooting thing has been beat to death, and this team isn't a good shooting team. We know that. I don't think you're going to need to make a lot of threes to score a lot of points on Iowa, at least if you approach it the right way, which I still do trust that Illinois will. Looking at what Iowa's done, I think Illinois should be able to score a lot in the paint tonight and will. But you also got to get enough stops to win. Like, Iowa could score 94 on you. Can you score 96 and get out of there with a win? Yeah, but what if you fall into a lull like Illinois has and you do settle for threes for a 4 or 5 minute stretch and don't score much? And on the other end, Iowa's getting what they want, and they got a lot of shot makers. I mean, if Sanford and Dix are getting the type of looks that Illinois has been giving up, they could hit a ton of them on you. This Iowa team loves hitting mid-range jump shots, and Illinois has given up wide open mid-range jump shots, and that's part of what they try to do. But it's been like guys trailing far behind screens. These are like layups for Sanford and Dix if you give them some of those shots. So that's where it can get really scary is, yeah, Iowa hasn't guarded anything. You should be able to score, but, boy, Illinois hasn't been much better on defense here recently. You're going to need to guard something here and keep them out of transition. Don't turn it over. Let them get out and run because they're still a good transition offense. Their offense is great. So I'm concerned on that side of the ball that they're going to be able to do what they want as well. And then it becomes a shootout, and how confident are you in only winning a shootout right at this moment?
Right at this moment, not super confident, no. And I agree and wrote about a lot of what you just said. I emphasize transition defense is something that Iowa still ranks up there. They're top 30 in the country in points per possession and transition. They're really just about a point per game as far as that goes behind Alabama, who's, we very much associate who's the best out on the fast break out there in the country. Alabama's one that comes to mind, and Iowa's just a smidge below them in terms of what they're doing on the break this season. So that, in looking back at the matchups last year, Illinois did a really good job against Peyton Sandfort and Champaign, who this guy is an all-league type of player, a guy that can really get going from three. When he's in the zone, he can rattle off 6, even 7 threes, and really high IQ player, is a great cutter if you're trying to hug him too close to the three-point line. He can cut to the basket and just does a lot of really, really good things for Iowa. But when he came to Champaign last year, I think Shannon took that matchup. If I'm not, I can't remember exactly. Maybe Shannon was on Perkins. But either way, Illinois only let him get up 2 3-point attempts in Champaign. He scored, I think, only 13 points. Josh Dix really hurt Illinois in their matchup at State Farm Center. He had 20 points and, like you said, got a lot done with the mid-range pull-up. You go against that drop coverage, and he'll happily take the pull-up 15-footer in rhythm with a guy trailing him as much as you give it to him. And I on the season, he shot above 50% from the field on 2-point jump shots. So that's got to be something. There's got to be an adjustment there, whatever it is, of trying to get through those screens, maybe vary up what he sees when he comes off a ball screen. Because I don't think you can just live with him taking those shots and hope that he won't make enough of them to hang in the game. But with the transition, if Iowa does anything well defensively, which really they're a horrendous defense, it's turn you over. And you look at the Michigan game they played earlier this season, they turned Michigan over 17 times. When they beat Rutgers, I think they turned them over 15 times, something like that, somewhere in the ballpark. They played Indiana, they turned them over a bunch. I think it was 16 in that game. And that's something that we know Illinois can get sloppy with the ball. I think an interesting wrinkle within this, or just very much a interesting real game plan chess match between Fran and Brad, is how much zone is Fran going to play. And I was a little surprised at how, in looking at their analytics, how little they've played of late. They're about an 87% man team versus 13% zone team. You have to go back to their game in January against Indiana, where they really played more zone than man. They played a bunch of zone, which makes sense. Indiana not only can't shoot threes very well, but they don't even want to, so it made sense to play zone. I wouldn't be surprised if this is another one for Fran. Why wouldn't you just be like,
exactly,
we're going to zone you almost all night?
If you're a team that practices zone and has a 2-3 zone in your bag, why on earth wouldn't you use it against Illinois all night?
Yeah, and I think that could be something that confuses Illinois a little bit, or just makes them out of sync.
I'd be very nervous about some of the 3-point attempts that get settled for in a zone with this Illinois offense right now. Wouldn't like that. Yeah, I wouldn't like that math game going up against Iowa's offense, Illinois shooting a lot of three. That's the problem. Is I think Illinois should be able to have their way in the paint against a man defense. If you throw that zone in there, not that you still can't, attack the gaps and exploit the fact that Iowa just has no size on the inside. You can use Tommy and try to flash him in the middle and see if, there's just no rim protection. There's no second line of defense if you break down the zone for them. But I just don't have confidence that Illinois wouldn't just fall back into here's an open three, brick. Here's an open three. This team can't make a shot. And I think if you're just going up against Iowa's base defense, you should be able to get wherever you want to in the paint. But if all of a sudden they make you fall into the trap of shooting it, then it becomes really nerve-wracking, because then the pressure really is on for you to get stops, because if you're not scoring at a high level tonight, it's going to be really hard.
For sure. Yeah, I think against that zone, no doubt, you got to try to move the ball enough on the perimeter to open up those gaps as much as you possibly can to drive, because you could still get there in the middle of the defense off the bounce. This isn't the most athletic of teams, obviously. That's kind of, Iowa's been a finesse offensive team for a long time here. So I think that's something that I would look for. Also, you make a good point, Tommy in the middle. I also have thought, could you put KJ or somebody else in the middle and maybe throw like a little over-the-top lob past Tommy on the block to try to post him up. If their big man, which Dembele is starting at 6'8", 255, I mean, he's got strength at 255 for only being 6'8", but that's giving up a lot of length to if you can post Tommy. I know that's not something he always wants to do, and he even said yesterday, hey, I'm playing about 240 something. I'm about 10, 11 pounds underweight and don't feel as strong as I normally do. Still, you think if you get the ball within 5 feet of the rim and have him be able to turn around and no one's going to block your shot, like try to get some baskets that way. But I want to see this team. And before we catch our first break, let's try to paint the picture here, Kyle, of maybe we can do both sides of this. We'll do the other one after the break. But, hey, it's a sunny day. It's Illinois basketball. Got another chance for new life here tonight. What would the perfect Illinois basketball start look like tonight, in your opinion? Take the pressure off, get the building going, get the positive vibes going right off the bat. What does that look like if you're an Illinois fan or if you're on that team? I do think it probably starts with just relentlessly go to the rim and have success just repeatedly against a defense that shouldn't be able to stop you once you get there.
Yeah, like 3 dunks in the first 3 minutes at the rim, I think would go a long way, because not only are those not only are you executing well offensively and getting the ball into the paint, but those are the plays that can get the place going and actually get some energy in there. But yeah, you just can't come out and settle and miss shots early in the game, because then the pressure just builds. It's one of those nights where there's so much being put on this game. Everybody's aware of the importance of this game, and even just for the players on the floor, it can get really tense early if you fall behind and if you fall into the same offensive shooting trap. Because that's what Brad Underwood has been talking about. Like, we don't have the toughness to actually make shots if we miss a couple. Like, just to get over that mental block is something that he's really started to talk about. And, if it's a situation where you miss 3-4 shots early in the game, I just think this team is not in a good place right now to overcome that. So you just need to find the easiest points possible. I want 3 dunks early in the game. I want Kasparis attacking the rim. Who's guarding KJ on Iowa? Who do you put? Is Traore, or I guess he's a decent defense. I think KJ should be able to attack. I want to see Kylan Boswell put his head down, get to the paint. I think Iowa's going to have a tough time with his physicality. If Brock Harding is in front of him, go. Bully him. What game was it where Kylan stiff-armed a dude for a layup? Like that. Give me one of those early in the game.
The Minnesota game he was doing that?
It might have been. Yeah, it might have been. Give me one of those drives. Even if you get an offensive foul, I'd
be fine with
go. It. Yeah, just Brock Harding standing in front of you, or whoever they Thelwell, should be able to attack that. And I want to see an emphasis of exploit this awful paint defense. The fact that there's a 6'8" center on the floor, get that ball inside, find some easy buckets early, and do not fall behind by any margin by that under 16 timeout, or it's going to feel really tense.
I agree with all that. I would add in there, destroy them on the glass. You look at their numbers, both offensive and defensive rebounding rate. You should not be giving up second chance opportunities to this Iowa team. They're terrible as far as creating those. And that's been one of the things, and you look at Illinois' defensive metrics here recently, one of the big things that sticks out like a sore thumb is Illinois' 300th and something in defensive rebounding rate. That is not the Illinois that we have come to know over the course of this season, even with some flaws sprinkled in there, and obviously the consistent one being the lack of three-point shooting, but giving up all the offensive rebounds. Yes, Michigan State, they're good at that, so them having a night on the glass is something that I'm not terribly concerned about, or that's a lasting issue, but it has been here recently. Rutgers had a really good opportunity to hurt you on the offensive glass. Obviously, Duke did as well. But you look at, on the season, Iowa's 315th in offensive rebounding, 302nd in defensive rebounding. You should be able to, I think especially, you go to the rim, if some shots come off or get contested, or whatever it might be, just have more guys crashing there to be able to get those. And on the occasion, I'm not saying don't take any threes tonight, but some of those long rebounds, go chase those down, have the opportunities to get second and maybe even third cracks at it for sure. And then just defensively and roping it in with rebounding, just all-out effort. This team can change nothing schematically, change nothing lineup-wise, and that's a low bar, obviously. I'm saying if they could just change the way that they come out in terms of hunger and effort and just looking like a team that's going to just refuse to lose, that would be such a shot in the arm at home that people could appreciate and could make a big difference in just going out and winning the game. Now, one other added thing here, I'm not saying that this needs to happen, but I would like to see it. I'd like to see Will Riley start over Ben Henriquez tonight.
Yeah.
I think that would help for Illinois to get off to a fast start, have another guy with the ball in his hands that can get downhill, that can facilitate and make some things happen, that maybe take some pressure off of KJ, whatever it might have to be, and have Ben get ready to play, maybe back up 5 minutes tonight, because you really don't have a guy to play behind Tommy. And I'm not saying that's the only minutes that Ben can play tonight, like that he can't share the court with Tommy at all. But I want Will Riley. I think one thing to kind of maybe kickstart, jumpstart, do something different. Illinois hasn't had a lot of time in practice to really tweak a lot of things, but that's one thing I think is very easy to pull the trigger on. And you said it yesterday, like this team's going to ride out wherever they go the rest of the way. KJ, Tommy, Will. How about we just start it tonight, starting lineup, and say that's what we're going with.
Absolutely, yeah, and then figure out early in the game who the other two guys are that are going to show some real fight and urgency on the floor, whether that's DGL in his first stint, he's a candidate to always just come in there and be an energy guy. I'd love to just see a little bit more fire and intensity from Kylan, especially if he's going to continue to start. And like in a matchup like this where you could dominate the glass, that's an area where if you're going to start Trey White, I'd like to see him feast on the offensive glass. I want to see him have one of those 8-9 rebounding games at 13 rebounds at Nebraska. That version of Trey White should have an opportunity to put up numbers like that tonight, and that's another guy who he actually was okay against Duke. He scored some points when it was the 30-point game, so you take it with a grain of salt, but he actually at least played decently in that game on the offensive end on the glass. So I agree with you. This team needs to live or die with their 3 star players or their 3 highest upside guys, KJ, Will, Tommy. Those are your big 3 that are going to take you as far as you're going to go the rest of the year, but figure out who those other 2 guys are and ride with those. If that means playing a guy 10 minutes tonight because he comes out and he doesn't show you what he needs to show you, if that's Henriquez or whoever it is, and play him 9 minutes and play whoever else it is 32 minutes. Find the lineup, and this you have to have this game, so you need to pull out all the stops, figure out which 5 are going to give you the best chance. I agree, though. Let's just start Will because I think he's, at least in the last month, he's been your best player. Overall, I think he's been your best player. So, yeah, get your best player on the court for as many minutes as he can handle tonight.
I like the sound of that, no doubt about it. And if we can get Fran to FranCon 3 or 4 by the first media timeout, I think that'd be part of the recipe, too, of what Illinois fans want to see.
That's the other thing, though. I haven't really seen Muddy Fran meltdowns this year. He feels like
he's leaving that alone?
He's just – I watched a ton of Iowa this year, but I haven't seen a whole lot of, over-the-top Fran, which is another thing that makes me think I think he's on the way out. I think he's just kind of – riding off into the sunset, I'll leave that alone. I'll just kind of hang out, and this is my last year. No need to get ejected or anything like that.
Come on, Fran. Maybe just one more for old time's sake.
If there was any place that he was probably going to let one out, Champaign, Illinois would be a good candidate, I think, after everything that's happened recently.
That would make sense. I'm sure the Orange Crush would be trying to get under his skin regardless. If you want to weigh in, you can. 217-359-2255. Hit us up on the Max Twin City Recycling text line. Thoughts on Illinois and Iowa tonight? Hit us up. What does a perfect start look like tonight? Would you make any changes to the starting lineup, scheme? What's on your mind as we get going in a must-win game for Illinois against the Hawkeyes? We'll talk a lot more about tonight's matchup at State Farm Center. Stick around for that. This is The Drive.
ILLINI. Cheer on the Illini and Pia's. The pregame fun starts at Pia's Sports Bar and Grill. Pia serves up its famous 10-ounce Slugger Burger along with great wings and so much more. Enjoy 350 22-ounce light and Coors Light drafts every home and away Illini game. Watch the game at Pia's or ride the free shuttle to all home games. You'll find it all at Pia's with live video gaming, sports, food, drinks, and fun. See you at Pia's, West Springfield Avenue in Champaign.
It's dollar stretching season at Brock. Now's the time to get an outstanding deal on Brock's full line of storage, conditioning, handling, and structure products for your grain. As an authorized independent Brock dealer, Paul's in Villa Grove can help you stretch your hard-earned dollars while providing a proven Brock system that offers greater quality and value. Don't delay. The earlier you buy, the better the pricing. See Paul's today. These deals won't last long. Paul'sMachine.com.
Take charge of the years ahead with a smart, sound investment strategy and business succession plan. Busey Bank's business and wealth management experts help you envision your best future with powerful insights and proven strategies. Building business and growing wealth since 1868, Busey Bank, proud to be the official bank of the Fighting Illini. Member FDIC.
Kelsey Furniture in downtown Tuscola sells Tempur-Pedic beds. What's it like?
I'm going to tell you right now, Stevie, that thing is the best thing I've ever slept on in my life. My wife and I both have said we've never had better night's sleep. And the people at Kelsey's were fantastic. Brian is the guy that helped us. You know, as much as I did my research, he had a world of knowledge about beds themselves. Oh, man, it's like sleeping on a cloud, man.
Kelsey Furniture, downtown Tuscola.
In 1925, a small plumbing company began its journey in Urbana, Illinois. Over the decades, the business grew thanks to hard work and great people. In 1966, things changed when Dave Reichard, a veteran, met veteran Ken Asklin, who was an architectural engineering grad from Illinois. The two realized their shared vision for excellence. Their partnership took root, and in 1975, the name changed to A&R Mechanical. With Dave as president and Ken as vice president, A&R Mechanical expanded services, becoming the go-to full-service contractor for all of Central Illinois. A&R went from a plumbing-only contractor to a full-service mechanical contractor with their own sheet metal shop. Today, A&R is a plumbing, heating, ventilation service company with the same excellence in customer service as they provided nearly 100 years ago. Design, build, and maintain. That's what served A&R Mechanical for nearly 100 years. Find them at Lincoln and Kettering in Urbana or online at ar-mech.com.
Sarah Champagne Managing Partner Ben Quattrone.
We're always looking for people. You can go online and apply on our website. We never know what we're going to need. We're always expanding. We're always building more and growing our business. If we don't need a person and they come along and we find out that they're an eagle, they're a star, we'll hire them. We'll put them somewhere and wait for the spot we're going to have them working.
Learn more at sarahchampagne.com.
This is XYZ Insurance. How can I help?
I have a question about my home policy.
Okay, question about phone policy.
Home policy.
Okay, gnome policy.
HOME, home.
Technology is great, but sometimes it's better to talk with a real person. With Erie Insurance, you have a caring, independent agent who's with you from beginning to end.
We don't have any HOMEs on record.
Your Erie agent in Champaign is Thomas & Ellers Insurance. Go to erieinsurance.com for company licensure and product details.
Not every remodel project is as easy as the couple on the Home Improvement Channel make it look. From old furniture to construction debris, a home remodel can quickly turn into a junk pile. Two Men in a Junk Truck is here to make your home improvement dreams a reality. They offer hassle-free junk removal and dumpster rentals to clear the way for your next big project.
Perfect.
Use code REMODEL25 to save $25 on your next service. Two Men in a Junk Truck, making your home improvement journey a breeze. Visit twomeninajuncktruck.com. Offer valid at Two Men in a Junk Truck, Champaign, Illinois.
Back on the drive with Sam Piper, ESPN Radio 93.5. We'll have to figure out an answer to Austin's question. He says, who's the Iowa guy that's going to get his career high tonight? Not sure. Not sure as of right now. I'd have to look into that. I did write up today that Sekou Traore, or Traore, however you say it, transfer from Manhattan. He's been inserted into the starting lineup since Owen Freeman went out. He's 6'7", 220-pound forward. He's only shot 33% from the field since being a starter, 2 for 11 from 3. I looked at his catch and shoot numbers between last year at Manhattan as a freshman and this year. 19%, 7 for 36. So that's a prime dork candidate. Although I wrote that, and then I know somebody questioned it and like, hey, you know, just what was Jackson Kohler's numbers going into that? Maybe don't dork anybody unless you really have to. I like that line of thinking.
I'd be okay just getting rid of the dork game plan. It's bitten Illinois more than it's helped them this year, in my opinion. At the very least, close out on his first look. Like, don't just sit there and be like, all right, go ahead. Step into it, take your time. I mean, it's just shoot around out here for you. Like, get a hand in his face and maybe hope he misses it, and then he'll be discouraged from taking the next one. Kind of like Lon was saying yesterday. Like, just have him miss one, and then, you know, it's the confidence thing to me, where it's like if you're given a D1 college player, especially one that's starting for a Big Ten program, a wide open jumper, yeah, there's a decent chance he'll make it. If he makes one, then he's going to be confident the next time he gets one.
Yeah, no doubt. Maybe, like you said, close out on it. He misses, then you kind of maybe dare him to shoot the next one with a little bit more space, and then he's already missed one, so maybe he's already thinking about, you know, whatever needs to happen differently on the next attempt and whatnot. But I agree with you on that. I think the dork thing. And I referenced back, again, the first time I really saw it, at least when I noticed it, the Penn State game where they were doing it to help out on Kofi. When you have a player that commands 2 defenders, then I understand it. But if the dorking guy is just kind of hanging out in no man's land, not guarding anyone else, but also not guarding the guy on the perimeter, then I think it's kind of useless, unless the guy shooting it is just that terrible. So I'm with you on that, but maybe I look at that one tonight. Traore from 3, if he's open, I think the profile here says that you could probably get away with it, but if you're looking for the guy that steps up and makes a couple shots that you're like, oh, you know, he hasn't made one all year, or he's barely made any threes in his 2 seasons in college, yeah, he'd be the guy.
Yeah, I think he would. It's not like, you know, it's not the random role player that has his career night, but I do think either Sanford or Dix could have 30-some tonight if you're not careful, because I just think this is a matchup and a defense right now that they should probably be really excited to play against, because I think they're going to get every mid-range shot they want, and especially Dix is, like you said, just so efficient taking those. Like it's almost like I'm curious to see how Brad handles that, because you have to adapt to the personnel. Like for Josh Dix, as much as you want to give up mid-range jumpers, if he gets 5 feet of space on a mid-range jumper, that is a really high percentage shot for him. So all of a sudden your math game and your analytics game is telling you that's not good defense to give him those shots, because he's probably going to make a lot of them. I also worry about Sanford, something that I thought, and really for a while this year, and again, part of it is by design, but even sometimes – I think off-ball screening has been a problem for Illinois, especially like I think back to Duke and Isaiah Evans. There was a stretch late in the first half where they ran him off screens. He got back-to-back open looks because Will Riley just was lost trying to chase him around and gave him all the space in the world. And I feel like that's been a consistent thing for a lot of guys on Illinois, is getting lost, getting hung up on some off-ball stuff. And Iowa likes to run Peyton Sanford to death off the ball to get him looks, and I think Illinois could have some trouble with that, and I'm not sure who the matchup would be for that, because like you said, last year it was Terrence or whoever it was that did a nice job. Who is it on this year's team that can chase him around for 40 minutes and try to make his catches tough? not get hung up on the screening action that Iowa runs for him, because if he makes a couple early, he's one of those guys that's so streaky that he could make 8. So you got to be really careful about that.
Kylan on Dix, or would you go Kylan on Sanford? Kylan on one of those guys,
One
right?
of those guys, yeah. And Dix is smaller, right? He's 6'4"-ish.
I think he's 6, might be 6'6".
Is he? He's big?
Yeah, 6'6", 210.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
And Sanford 6'8", 215.
It's one of those two for him, for sure. I don't know if it even matters all that much.
Yeah. Try to put, your best perimeter defender on one of those guys. It's got to be one of those guys. It can't be him guarding Drew Thelwell and be like, all right, the rest of, when we're sitting here having a hard time trying to figure out who the second best defender is for Illinois, and we can't really come up with it all that well, let's start with Illinois' best guy and put him on one of the two. I was looking at Josh Dix's game log here from this year. His season high, and I think his career high, 31 against Nebraska in an overtime game in Iowa City.
He had to have close to that last year in Champaign. What did he get to?
He only got to 20. I thought it was more than that, but yeah, it was 20.
I could have sworn he was at 30 last year.
I know,
It
right?
felt like
felt
that.
like it. Felt like it. They kind of faded in that game. That was a high scoring. Iowa was hanging with the Illini, then Illinois pulled away 95-85. But yeah, it was 20 for him in Champaign. He only had 13 when they suited up again in Iowa City. Sanford was kind of the inverse, 13 here in Champaign, and I think 23 with 5 triples in that game in Iowa City. And he could have had more. He had a lot of really good looks in that game ultimately. But yeah, Dix has been on a good stretch here. He's had some really good games in February. 27 against Purdue at the beginning of the month. Had 23 or it was 26, I should say, at Rutgers when they went on the road and got their lone Big Ten road win this season. They're 1-6 in Big Ten road games, and that was the one that they were able to steal from opposing territory. So we'll see as far as that goes. Big Def says, just got in my car and tuned in. Am I hearing about Dorking Dix? No, we're not going to. No. Dorking Traore and how important it will be to not let Dix get comfortable in the mid-range. That is a tough thing with him because you can't go under his screens. He's a 43% three-point shooter. Should Illinois do something different with Tommy as the ball screen big man other than sitting and drop? Can you do much else? That's something I question. I don't know if you can.
And then you're just so vulnerable on the backside at the rim. Like if he's coming out and those guys just pass out of it, the recovery time on Tommy's not going to be – it's just so hard because you don't have the mobility of Merez. I think if you had Merez healthy, I'd say when Merez is in there, I want like almost blitzing screens with him just because I trust his athleticism, mobility to recover and his length. But I think you're almost causing more issues if you do that with Tommy. I almost wonder – I mean, you're probably going to have Tommy on the floor as long as he can handle it. But if he's off the floor, do you just switch everything since you got everybody? I mean, you don't have a big in there. If it's Ben playing the 5 or something, he's probably not going to be off the floor much. But if there are times, whether he's in foul trouble or just getting a breather, then, I mean, at that point, I think you just try to at least, you're going to be so vulnerable anyway that you at least just try to switch.
You could. I would hope that then Iowa doesn't sniff that out and are like, all right, we're just going to play into a switch for Ben onto Dix every possession. But at least, like you're saying, he's not going into drop.
I think those guys on Iowa, they're not all that fast and athletic. I mean, they're great shot makers. True. But how much are you concerned that they're going to blow by Humrick to the rim?
Yeah.
Is that even what they want to do?
That's fair. That's a good point. Let's see here. What else were we getting to? 217. Traore only played 3 minutes last game. That was someone that didn't watch the Iowa-Washington game. Thought it was interesting that he started and only played 3 minutes. They're doing some of that with a couple of their other guys. They've moved Brock Harding from being a starter to coming off the bench, and sometimes he'll come off the bench but still play 20-some minutes. And they've got some Riley Mulvey who does that as well in terms of sometimes 6'11", who hasn't been starting but can play some more minutes in the front court if they need it and see that size. But the 217 says Thelwell is the guy I think will score out of his mind. Played at Morehead State last year. He was one of the top assist guys in the country last season at Morehead State. This year, he's had some really good games. He's coming off an ankle injury. And since then, the last 2 games since being reinserted in the lineup, he hasn't scored and played about 23 minutes across 2 outings. But in looking back at some of their games, particularly in January, 25 points at the Kohl Center was a really good outing for him. Also, he's been a guy that's created a lot of steals defensively, 4 steals in that one, 6 steals against Indiana, along with 12 points there. And he is shooting a pretty darn respectable 41% from 3, which I think is a career high for him. So he's a guy that familiar with Illinois, saw them last year, 8 points, 4 assists against the Illini in the NCAA tournament last season. And the Illini will go up against him once again tonight at State Farm Center.
This game, it has a very uneasy feeling about it. To me, like, everything points to Illinois should just overpower this Iowa team. But what has made you confident that this team is going to beat anybody coming off what they've done? Or just do what they're capable of doing just from a energy perspective. It feels so off with Illinois right now. Like the 10.5 point line that's out there. Who would bet Illinois to win a game by double digits right now? Who?
I don't think I could.
How could you possibly do that?
I don't think I could.
Like, you just need to see it. And that's, again, with this game, even more so than, obviously, you got to win the game, but just to see what the response is on the floor. It's going to say everything early in this game, because I just think there's the potential coming off what Illinois is coming off to just lose the want to, and to just lose the, and you know what the right word is for it, but you just got to show the proper urgency.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, and we'll get to the predictions later in the show, but my gut still says that they will get tonight. They will get that done tonight. And I don't know what that is. Ultimately, I think there's enough still in there of, like, Illinois is more talented than Iowa, which I know doesn't guarantee you anything. But another thought, too, like, for as much turbulence and turmoil that was very public in the 22-23 season, it never bottomed out, right? I mean, it was really disappointing that they lost. They ended up losing their last 3 games. They once again lost to Penn State for the 3rd time, and that was really disappointing. And then there was no confidence that they were going to go in the NCAA tournament and do much of anything, and they did, and they lost in the first game. But they didn't fully hit rock bottom, it didn't feel like. And I don't know what that says about that team versus and what's comparable to this team. What would be the reason why this team could bottom out, but that team didn't? If you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Now this team doesn't have Terrence Shannon, and not last year's version of Terrence Shannon the year before, but Shannon and Meyer that year. That was a place to start, no doubt. And you're talking about older guys versus this year's team has talented freshmen, and it's the transfers that, not saying they're the only problem. KJ's played poor over the last handful of weeks on the whole. Will's had his ups and downs. Merez is hurt. But
you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I almost feel like late in that season, Shannon kind of became the guy that, now he was inconsistent that year, was nothing like the All-American version, but there were times where it almost felt close to bottoming out for that team, and then Shannon would carry them to like that Northwestern game. They were down 20-some at halftime at home.
Yep.
Shannon goes nuts in the second half. You come back and win that game. That non-tournament disappointing Michigan team comes to Champaign, one of the last games of the regular season, and they look like they've got the game under control. Shannon has a huge close in overtime to that game. You win it, and what was that, double overtime? Like,
you're right.
Do you have that guy? That's almost where, can Kasparis be that? Does he have that in him late in this season to turn himself back into the top 5 draft pick, star player, leader, offensive? I mean, follow me. get on my back, I can carry us that we saw at times, especially late in games early in the season. That almost feels like you need somebody to do that, and it probably has to be him just because he's going to have the ball in his hands so much. But you need like a star to come back and actually star for you. And can that be Kasparis to be kind of the catalyst of that? Like tonight, early in the game, to just attack, get 8 early points in this game, and find his old form. I wonder if he has that inside of him.
That's a good point that you bring up. And that was what, a 22-year-old Terrence Shannon that year?
Yeah. That's the issue.
So that is
a freshman
difference.
do it.
A freshman 18-year-old versus having Terrence, who was a senior 22-year-old, and then of course played his 5th year at Illinois as well at 23, and that helped a lot, no doubt about it. And even the Indiana game, you went on the road that year, and Shannon was out, but Meyer had a really good game, and you took that team to the wire and ultimately weren't able to get it done. But yeah, between one of those two, I remember whenever that Wisconsin game on the road, which Illinois actually won that year, Meyer went nuts. They kind of traded off between, Meyer carried you for a while. Shannon had a stretch there down, like you said, late in the year, where he started to come into his own as the alpha on the team, and that helped. If KJ can't be that, then that is going to be a problem. That's a good point. What say you on the text line as far as the bottom out potential for this team? Do you feel like it's very real? Is this something that is different than any other Brad team that we've seen, at least the ones that have been tournament level teams and since the breakthrough for him as with the program? So I want to hear from you. 217-359-2255, Max Twin City Recycling text line. Let's take one quick break, come back, wrap up the hour. This is The Drive.
Good morning, First Federal Savings Bank. How may I direct your call?
Speak with friendly, real people during lobby hours. It matters when you call First Federal Savings Bank of Champaign-Urbana. A real person located at the bank. Not a recording answers your call during lobby hours. Personal, friendly service makes a difference. 217-356-BANK.
Thank you for calling. Have a great day.
Rated 5-star superior by Bauer Financial, Inc. Fast, friendly, and local with local loan decisions and underwriting. If you're not already banking with us, give us a try. We think you'll love it here. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender. NMLS 435120.
So Tim, he's in charge of Dedicated Diesel and Gale Frericks Trucking. Let's begin with Gale Frericks Trucking. How are we doing?
Oh, we're doing real good. We got a bunch of great guys. We work together, and it's how things are done around here. If we need to fix something, we face it head on, we get it fixed. And that's the kind of guys we're looking for, that really want to service the customer and want to do things right and want to be successful. They want to make good money. They want to be home with their families on the weekends, and that's the kind of guys that we need here.
As far as training and GFT, they kind of go hand in hand, and you got everyone very experienced on your crew.
Oh yeah, it's a great team, and even the ones that don't have much experience, we're teaching them the right ways to do things, and that goes a long way. We don't just tell them what to do. I'm a teacher at heart, so I'm teaching them why we're doing it. That really hits home with them. They appreciate that. It just makes things run so much smoother.
How can people reach Tim Onstock?
They can get me at TIMO@GFTLOG.com or Dedicated Equipment on Facebook.
Back on the Drive with Dan Piper, ESPN Radio 93.5. Bill says, I think the team has quit. He also adds, if Brad killed Draven's desire to play for him, easy to see how everyone else would bail. Wade says, I think DGL should be starting. I wouldn't mind that. I mean, I did the whole thing after Wisconsin, said it's time to double down on Dre. It's time to start prioritizing him like one of your top players, not only now, but for the future. And I don't worry about, especially in a game like tonight, must win, energy, intensity, toughness. I think Dre would have that from the jump.
Talk about a guy that could live at the rim
and get to the rim.
You won't find me complaining about Dre or Will starting. I want your best players and the guys that are going to give you the most intensity and urgency on the court playing nearly all night long.
Yeah.
And that's the other part of it too, is I get the idea of like, okay, maybe we don't want to start both Will and Dre because we want, a scorer to come off the bench. I don't need a whole bench unit coming in at this point. Like, I want to ride with my primary guys. Like, just start your best guys, ride with them. I mean, I'm not saying play everybody 40 minutes and run them to the ground, but you don't need a deep 8-man rotation at this point. Find your 5 or 6, and you need to win this game. You don't need a bench unit to come in 4 different guys. I just prioritize who your best guys are, in my opinion.
I wouldn't mind whether he starts or not. Also, DGL getting thrown at Josh Dix and saying just hound him. Even if you end up fouling him a couple of times, we can pivot off of that. We can deal with that, but just make him uncomfortable. Make him feel you, where that's somebody that I think athletically can stay in front, can fight through some screens, and you just don't want him to, maybe put him on the free throw line and get baited into whatever it is, jumping into him off, chasing a screen or whatever. But that's something that I might look for tonight. We'll go through other keys for Illinois to get it done tonight against the Iowa Hawkeyes and continue to break this thing down. When we return, it is The Drive.
You're listening to WSJK ESPN 93.5 Tuscola, Champaign-Urbana, your home for the St. Louis Cardinals.
With Russia. Russia, meantime, has been launching more attacks in Ukraine.
Just overnight, Russia unleashed more than 200 attack drones. Ukrainian officials say they also shot down 6 cruise missiles. And throughout the recent evenings, sirens have been blaring pretty much every few hours.
Fox's Alex Hogan in Ukraine's capital, Kiev, where civilians tell her they're pleading with the U.S. not to give up on Ukraine. While signing more executive orders, President Trump just announcing a new immigration program, visas for investors, what he calls gold cards, to be sold for $5 million to foreigners who want to move to the U.S. and create jobs. Also telling reporters it's possible Russian oligarchs could qualify. Federal workers get a second chance to avoid possibly being fired.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says there is no confusion over a request from Elon Musk for federal workers to list 5 bullet points of accomplishments this week.
The president and Elon, his entire cabinet, are working as one unified team, and they are implementing these very common sense solutions.
Musk initially set a Monday night deadline and warned failure to comply would be viewed as a resignation, but several agencies have cautioned employees about responding.
Agency heads will determine the best practices for their employees at their specific agencies.
Musk will attend the first cabinet meeting of President Trump's second term tomorrow.
Fox's Jared Halpern at the White House. America is listening to Fox News.
Someone had a birthday.
Yep, 50. Can't believe it.
50 years of wisdom.
Great segue. We have health news, a CDC update.
Pneumococcal vaccination is now recommended for adults 50 or older. Says here, we're over 6 times more likely to be hospitalized with pneumococcal pneumonia than adults under 50.
I don't love those odds.
Same. Look what I found. Pfizer's Prevnar 20 is proven to help protect adults against pneumococcal pneumonia and invasive pneumococcal disease in just 1 dose, and millions have already gotten it.
Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you have a severe allergy to its ingredients. A weakened immune system may lower your response. Common side effects include injection site pain and swelling, fatigue, headache, muscle, and joint pain. For full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138. Visit Prevnar20.com or talk to your doctor or pharmacist.
I'm on Prevnar20.com now, scheduling my appointment.
Good idea. And happy 50th.
Israel's defense minister just confirming an Israeli Air Force attack on southern Syria, calling it part of a new policy with a goal of not allowing southern Syria to become southern Lebanon. The Trump administration losing ground in 2 court fights, one federal judge extending an order that blocks a federal funding freeze on grants, loans, and other spending. Another judge is blocking a Trump order to suspend refugee resettlement, ruling it would effectively nullify the will of Congress.
The president suspended the refugee program, saying it was a tax on cities and communities that don't have the ability to absorb large amounts of migrants, including refugees. Last week, a federal judge in Washington, D.C. refused to immediately block the Trump administration's actions in a similar lawsuit. That case faces another hearing on Friday.
Fox's Jeff Manasso. A House panel now plans a hearing next week on air traffic control issues after a series of incidents highlighting concerns about persistent staffing shortages. Witnesses will include industry and union representatives. A variety of musical artists release a silent album to protest plans allowing artificial intelligence to use their work.
A new album, Is This What We Want, dropped Tuesday with over 1,000 musicians, including Kate Bush, Annie Lennox, Cat Stevens, and a whole lot of silence. It's a protest against the UK government's plans to let tech companies use copyrighted content to train AI unless artists opt out. The titles of the 12 tracks spell out the British government must not legalize music theft to benefit AI companies. The tracks consist of recordings of empty studios and performance spaces. Profits will be donated to the musicians' charity Help Musicians. Michelle Polino, Fox News.
Another mixed finish on Wall Street. The Dow gained about 160, but the S&P falls back under 6,000, and the Nasdaq drops 260. I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News.
Hello again, everyone. Let's check weather for Central Illinois, Champaign-Urbana vicinity. A hint of springtime yesterday, continuing on for the day today as well as tomorrow, despite a little rain back in the forecast. Matter of fact, no real cold in sight. There'll be a return to more seasonal temperatures across the area come the weekend, and another wet weather system doing as well for early next week. In the meantime, sunny to partly cloudy skies, light west-southwesterly winds settle on in this afternoon, and we'll top out at 58. That's about 15 above average, 36 with increasing clouds for tonight. Tomorrow continues unseasonably mild, lots of clouds, a little rain in spots for the morning, more so for the afternoon, but again, very much light amounts. Gusty south-southwesterly winds with a high at 57. Down into the 30s tomorrow night, partly sunny, cooler, not by much at 51 on Thursday, 55 on Friday. More seasonal temperatures over the back end of the weekend, a Saturday high of 46, 43 on Sunday. We're back up near 50 on Monday and into the 50s next Tuesday. More rain ahead as well. For Stevie J Broadcasting, I'm meteorologist Greg Solier.
It is the Drive with Sam Piper, ESPN Radio 93.5. Illinois, Iowa tonight. Must win for the Illini against the Hawkeyes. Any way that it can happen, even if it's as ugly as the Michigan-Nebraska game last night. I don't know if, Kyle, you caught any of that? Now, with these two defenses, there's no way in any possible world that this would be a race to 50 and nobody gets there.
There's a better chance of the first half score being higher than the final score of last night's Michigan game.
Unbelievable. What was that final score ultimately? Was it 49-46?
I think so.
Yes, 49-46. Michigan, were they trying to foul up three and they just didn't do it?
Well, they did it, but so early. They fouled Bryce Williams with 12 seconds left up three, who's a 90% free throw shooter, and it nearly bit him because he makes both free throws. Nebraska fouls in the second. Michigan misses the front end of the one-on-one. Nebraska comes down. Connor Essegian, trailing the play, gets a great look from three and missed it, and Michigan escapes. But the foul-up three thing, you got to execute. It's not just, well, we're up three, let's foul. If you foul too early, it's actually going to hurt you really bad. And it's happened like a few times here recently where teams will foul with like 13 seconds left. That ruins the whole point of it.
Yeah, that doesn't do you any good. No doubt. And so then there was the baseball pass down the court and they didn't foul. That's where it gets tricky. We had this conversation around the Arizona buzzer beater. I forget who that was against. Caleb Love hits the
Iowa State.
Okay, yeah, Iowa State. Caleb Love hits the three-quarters court game tying three, then goes to overtime and Arizona wins. It's like if you get in a situation where it's going to be a catch and shoot, then trying to then foul can really put yourself in a disaster situation. But Nebraska gets a chance from three to try to tie it, doesn't go down. Nebraska playing for the tournament lives right now, and I think they're still projected as in.
Last four in right now.
Last four in.
Play-in game.
I've got the Lenardi updated bracketology up. Like you said, Nebraska last four in. Ohio State on the last four buys, so not quite in the play-in game, but a team that shouldn't feel totally safe right now. Indiana on the first four outline, seeing two high-profile programs like North Carolina and then Indiana back-to-back on the first four out is pretty crazy, but that is the reality right now. By the way, did you catch the news of Hubert Davis incognito signs an extension back in December that just became public today?
I was just about to bring that up.
What in the world?
I wonder how long they've been sitting on that, where it's like he signs the extension and it's such a disaster for them that they're like, oh, we can't announce this now. Let's hope that we win some games. And now recently, I think they've won 4 in a row, even though it's been against awful ACC teams. So they're like, well, let's do it now. Let's try to slide it in there now. Let's get this announcement out.
Well, they're 18-11, 4 straight in a bad ACC. The KenPom teams they've beaten 129, 105, 101, 88. Yep, all systems go. Put it out there.
I don't know how they're that bad. Like, in that ACC, you can't make the tournament?
Right.
I mean, yeah, I wouldn't want Hubert back if I was a North Carolina fan. I'd be quite upset reading that.
That's wild. I don't know what the buyout number is and if we'll get that ultimately, but that is the bigger question probably. Would they sign an extension in December and then fire him a few months later? Probably not. But that's been a job that has been highly speculated on as far as potentially opening up this offseason. Maybe that changes now. And I think that their destination in the tournament will maybe amplify whether or not that fan base is ready fully to be done with him or give him one more crack at it.
They have to beat Duke at home in that last game of the season. That's it. Like, that's their whole year. You don't win that, you miss the tournament. You decline another NIT invite. And yeah, it's not good for Hubert over there. Boy, if that 8-seed team didn't get red hot and Caleb Love play the best 4 games of his life to go to the national title his first year.
It's true.
He'd have nothing to hang his hat on.
Be a complete dud. And I think that's another argument for the whole keeping it in the family thing for some of those blue blood programs. Like, why go get a really proven coach out there? Let's take a dude off the college game day set, put him as an assistant for a few years, and then he played here, right? Yeah, he's been a coach here for a few years. Yep. Head coach ever? No, you're the head coach of North Carolina.
Of course, it has worked for Duke, hasn't it?
Yeah,
Although it's pretty easy to have success when Cooper Flagg's in your pocket.
Be a hard one to mess up. He does deserve credit for getting Cooper Flagg, and
he is recruiting at a level even above what Krzyzewski was recruiting at for the last handful of years he was there. So you got to give him credit for that.
As far as I can tell thus far, and it will get more and more under a microscope, when you have a team like this, he'll be expected Final Four or bust at the very least, if not, win the title this year. If they slip up, then he'll get, being John Shire, a lot more criticized, and we'll find out a lot more how people feel about him. To this point, he's been impressive or just doing the right thing.
Of course, this is his 3rd year, and he was out in the first weekend the first 2, right? Or no, last year they made it deep but lost to NC State.
Yeah, that's right.
First year he lost early. But even that NC State loss, like, you shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, right?
That doesn't make much sense.
You got Kyle Neptune at Villanova, and that looks like something that
that one's
is not going well at all.
That's bad.
Rodney Terry at Texas,
Indiana. Woodson they didn't pull him. They didn't promote him from the staff, but it was, let's bring one of our own home, Indiana guy. And that's been a disaster. And now you're seeing Indiana fans like, anybody who has any connection to Indiana, cross them off. We can't do that in the family anymore. I'm done with that.
That's how it should be. It shouldn't be an automatic no, but it shouldn't be any kind of boost if you're a program, especially like those that have when Roy Williams retires, when Jay Wright retires, when Coach K retires. If Bill Self were to retire tomorrow, why should it be a Kansas guy or a Bill Self tree guy? Go hire the best coach. When you have those resources, that profile, all of that. So I did want to look at this bracketology and get a look at what Illinois' current projected path is. Yes, very much subject to change, barring tonight's result if they were to lose, or if they do figure it out and they beat Iowa and then may either win at Michigan, or even if they just won 2 of the last 3, win your 2 home games and then get a game or 2 in the Big Ten tournament. And you could be maybe out of the 8-9 and be a 7 seed, right? So we'll see where that goes. But just for fun and just to give you a snapshot, Lenardi has them as an 8 in the Midwest region. They'd be going to Raleigh, North Carolina, to play Baylor, another team that on paper going into this season, like, oh, man, they get Jeremy Roach and they got VJ Edgecombe, who's going to be a lottery pick, high-end lottery pick, and that looks like a really good team. And they've had some struggles this year and not living up to expectations. They're the 9 seed. Alabama, the 1 seed in that region. initial reactions on what that would tell you.
That Baylor team's been equally as disappointing as Illinois, so that'd just be like who's still got enough juice left in the tank to win this 8-9 game. But this current version of Illinois rematch in Alabama, they might top the 100 they put up back in November.
I agree. Yeah, could you keep them from 125? That would not be. Look, the current version of Illinois, I'm going to be terrified by any of these 1 seeds. Auburn, Duke, absolutely.
Now, what I will say is I'd much prefer Bama to 2 other 1 seeds.
Yeah.
And Bama has a tendency to shoot themselves out of games just like Illinois. So that's a team that, unlike Auburn and Duke, who are just so consistent, have 2 National Player of the Year candidates, so physical. Bama has the potential to shoot it awfully and play terrible. Like you've seen, they've lost some games this year where they just haven't shown up, and they've gone 3 for 26 from 3. So it wouldn't be the worst 1 seed.
And their defense has been leaking points a lot here recently as well. Florida being the other 1 seed.
Again, similar to Bama to me, like I'd take it. I wouldn't be confident in Illinois beating that team, but just keep me away from Auburn and Duke. And more importantly, show me some life within Illinois to say, okay, there's at least a team there that can compete in this game, and let's see what happens.
That's the biggest thing, right? We can look at all these matchups, and whether even like Baylor in the 9 hole there, you could sub that for Gonzaga, sub that for UConn, 2 other teams that are 9 seeds in this projection, and for their issues, it's just kind of who's got the most at the time, or whose team is less checked out or less in their head about confidence or whatever it might be. That is kind of how you're looking at it right now. None of these teams, I'm sure, are all that confident they're going to do much, but we'll see. Those are some big brand names and some teams that certainly aren't hurting for talent on the whole. Ultimately, I think another thing to add on there with Alabama, while Illinois will be going in with essentially barely any at all tournament experience, I wouldn't love, Mark Sears for as up and down as he's been on this year, him and Grant Nelson being like, we know what this is like.
Yeah, big game player, Mark Sears. He's like one of those guys that he just shows up in those big games. It feels like hit shots. Don't think he'll be scoring 0 again the second time around. And
wouldn't imagine.
His 0 still led Alabama to 100. Or despite his 0, Alabama scored 100 the first time around.
Unreal.
And the way Illinois has guarded recently, Alabama team total 105.5 would probably be about the range that I would put it at.
Might go over. One thing I wanted to do as well is look at this and look at some Big Ten teams and who we feel as of today would be the most confident going on the deepest run here. So looking at some other projected landing spots based on Joe Lunardi's bracketology. Michigan State, he has as a 2 seed with an arrow pointing up. There's no way they're going to be a 1 seed, but they are trending up to the 2 line. Of course, you get the win in Ann Arbor that they were able to secure. They get to face Michigan again in East Lansing before the season's over. So 2 line would be a great spot in terms of the matchups that would come their way.
What's the 7-10 matchup they'd run into?
Memphis and Vandy.
A.J. Hoggard versus Michigan State.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay. Dane Danger against Zapala and Kohler and that group.
I still don't think Michigan State goes deep. They can make a Sweet 16, and it wouldn't surprise me at all. I don't see it as a Final Four team.
And
if you're on the 2 line, you're expected to be a Final Four caliber team. I just don't see it with Michigan State still. I just think they're not going to have enough to win 4 in a row against quality opponents.
Bad shooting team. Don't have an established alpha when you need it in terms of the buckets. If Jace Richardson can become that over the next couple of weeks, maybe he's like one of the standout players of the Big Ten tournament and then rolls into the NCAA tournament as kind of their go-to guy, then maybe that elevates them to another level. I just think they're a really high floor team. And credit to them. I mean, they play great defense. They rebound the heck out of the ball. They've got good depth. They're going to be a tough out, but if they have a team, especially they run into a good defensive team kind of bottle them up a little bit, and compete with them on the glass. I mean, they could easily go out in the first weekend.
Yeah, it almost feels like to me they'll beat the 15 seed. I think they're one of those teams that is going to be impossible to get hugely upset just because of the floor, like you said. And I think they'll take care of a 7 or 10 seed in just kind of a ho-hum. They won't blow them out, but they'll find a way. But then it's when you get to the team that you're on equal caliber to, like that 3 seed in the Sweet 16, where I don't really feel like this Michigan State team, like beating multiple teams that are of equal caliber or better than them, I just don't see it with them.
I agree with you. In that same region, that being the South for Joe Lunardi, he has Ohio State as an 11 seed. I don't think we're taking them to go all that far. They are currently matched up with Kansas, the 6 seed.
Wow.
That Providence region would be interesting. They got Kansas as a 6 and Kentucky as the 3.
Could you imagine a round of 32 game Kansas-Kentucky?
Be fun.
It would. Although that Kansas team's got problems.
Major problems. Is there any scenario where you'd want AJ Storr in the portal? Any scenario?
No.
Even if he was like free NIL?
No.
Wow. Okay.
No.
I'm not saying I disagree.
Bill Self can't make it work with him. No thanks.
Yeah, you're right. All right, let's go over to the East. Michigan projected 4 seed. In this bracket, they would get Lipscomb, who's a 13, Mizzou's the 5, McNeese State the 12. It's a little.
For whatever reason, Michigan to me feels like a 4-13 upset candidate. Now that's tough because, boy, what 13 seed's going to be able to match up with those two bigs?
Right.
But they turn it over so much, and they're just so reliant on that like top 3 guys, Donaldson in the backcourt plus the 2 front court guys. And they have been playing with fire all season long. I saw somebody tweet after last night, like, they haven't won a basketball game by more than 4 points since the first week of January.
Yeah.
And they're 8-2 and over that stretch, or 8-3. They're a good team, and that they're a matchup nightmare for a lot of teams, but I would not be surprised if they got picked off in the first round. Especially if, let's say, they lose at Michigan State and then maybe lose to Maryland, who they still have on the schedule or whatever, and they fall to a 5 and they get a 12 seed.
Yep.
Ugh.
Yep.
I would be very interested in that matchup and trying to maybe pick a 12-5 upset there.
I saw that same stat last night, and it made me raise my eyebrows for sure. So they played an overtime game in Minneapolis. Of course, they lost to Minnesota. They barely beat Northwestern in Ann Arbor. Just some of these games you'd expect them to handle better. Now, there is something to be said. You know, the Io closing time games, there's a reason that Io had so many opportunities for the kill shot. Illinois is in a lot of close games, and there is something to be said for a team that can handle those moments and close that thing out. But at the same time, when you're supposed to, especially against a lesser foe, Penn State goes to Ann Arbor, you barely beat them. You beat them by 4. You go to the rack, although, you go to the rack, you could lose. You only win by 3. I just, in general, have found myself not fully trusting Michigan. I would not pick them. And I kind of frame this to you off the air. Who of the Big Ten teams would you pick to go the furthest? Michigan would not be my choice.
Not mine either. The 2 teams that I would be deciding between are actually 2 that you might not expect. They're not the teams that have been like the Big Ten title contenders all year long, although now they've made their way into it.
All right, let me tell you the next seeds and then we can pick of them. So you're going to go Nebraska in the play-in game as an 11. No, I'm just kidding. Nebraska play-in game, 11 seed. Wisconsin, 3 seed in the Midwest. Maryland, 5 seed in the Midwest. And then we also have UCLA, 6 seed in the West. Purdue, 4 seed in the West.
I'd be curious to know if Maryland can get to a 4 easily here, because I know they've got some. Now, I guess that's not going to make much of a difference because you're still facing the 1 in the Sweet 16. Maryland and Wisconsin, to me, are the interesting ones.
Mm-hmm.
I think those teams actually have the highest ceiling to me in the tournament among Big Ten teams, because Wisconsin, on one hand, their offense is spectacular, and they've got an elite scorer individually, which I think you have to have. And that's why I don't really like Michigan State. And even Michigan, they've got the big pick and roll, and they've got Danny Wolf and everything he can do, but they don't have like that go-to scorer on that team. Tanji is like, he is, the shots he hits and some of the big shots that he's made, their offense is just, we saw it, just how much shooting they can put on the floor. And they're not like a disaster on defense. I think Wisconsin has a chance, especially on the 3 line, which I think gives them a path to where you're not seeing a 1 seed until the Elite 8. I think they have potential, but I also think Maryland, just very quietly here, has been a very interesting team, and they've got Derek Queen playing like a man right now. If you've looked at some of his stat lines here recently, he looks like a bona fide lottery pick. That front court is going to be hard to match up with anybody, and they shoot it like crazy.
So both those teams are really good shooting teams.
So I would be very intrigued by both of those teams and what they could do. I'd be nervous about Maryland on that 4-5 range just because now if they're in the Midwest playing Bama, I think they could give Bama some trouble. But that's kind of where I'd lie. I don't think I'd go with the Michigan State, Michigan, Purdue group, which has kind of been the top 3 all year. I think in terms of like who could make an Elite 8, who has that ceiling to them, I almost would look a little bit below that.
Those are the teams that came to mind for me as well. One squad that I failed to mention here, and they've moved up seed lines. They were not long ago on the 8-9 projected, but they actually just went and beat Wisconsin and Kohl Center. Oregon is now a 5 seed.
No trust in them.
I wouldn't trust them either.
I actually talk about a team on the 5 line that I'd be dying to pick a 12 over would be Oregon if it's the right matchup.
Mm-hmm.
No thanks on Oregon.
Wisconsin was on a decent amount of people's projections a 2 seed before losing that game at Kohl Center. I think if you pressed me to pick one right now, I'd pick Wisconsin.
I agree.
Because of the shooting. I love Tanjay and Blackwell as a duo. I feel like they've got some depth pieces off the bench that can help them. Maryland's a little thin in terms of the rotation. Their starting 5 is great. I still really like Maryland because of their front court, and then obviously Gillespie has been a heck of a player, and really the 3 guys they start around those 2 inside are all shooting it well this season. But Tanjay is that he's not. I'm not going to put him and say he's Terrence Shannon, but some of the stretch of point production has been near that level when Terrence hit his stride last year, and that kind of guy can carry you.
Yeah, you saw it just here in Champaign a year ago, what a dominant individual postseason run can do for a team. And that's kind of what I look for in terms of teams I want to back in the tournament. You got to have, a balance offensively and defensively, and you got to have depth, and you got to have, a lot of different things. But the main thing that I want to see is, do you have a guy that tie game, 2 minutes left, or late in a close game, you have an individual scorer that you can trust with the ball in his hands to go make shots. And Wisconsin has that more than I think any team in the Big Ten. Braden Smith, but even him recently, he's been so passive. And, it's just Tanji's got that killer instinct to him that I've seen with him where he's just not afraid to take any shot. And, boy, some of the shots he makes, those step-back threes, he's just such a tough guard. I think he's clicking at the right time. And that Wisconsin offense is pretty scary. I think they're pretty upset-proof early, too, because it's just going to be so hard to stop them.
Feels that way. It definitely does. I don't know if there is a team up that's got the front court to just bully Crowell enough and to see what that could look like. But they are better in terms of their rebounding numbers, their rim defense numbers. Winters helped that some, even though he's not obviously a bruising 4-man, but a guy that gives them some additional size. He's 7 foot, and Crowell being in that range as well. So I really like what they look like, and credit to Greg Gard for having that thing rolling pretty well. We'll get back to talking Illinois, Iowa, get our predictions to you. We are due for a break. Before we do that, let me do a little bit of work. Let me tell you about Busey and some IRAs. Whether you want to travel, move to a warmer climate, or invest in a hobby, you have dreams for retirement. Whatever they might be, the experts at Busey Wealth Management recommend saving 10 to 15% of your annual income to help you achieve them. What's the best savings choice? A 401k or an IRA, individual retirement account? 401k is an employer-sponsored retirement savings plan. You contribute to the plan via payroll deduction, which makes it easy to save for retirement, while the IRA offers specific tax benefits. And there are a couple of different types that you can look at. The Roth IRA, taxed at the time of contribution, but earnings can be withdrawn tax-free. And then the traditional IRA allow your investment earnings to grow tax deferred until withdrawal. Both the traditional and the Roth, you can open an account anytime and make annual contributions. If you're trying to decide between a traditional or Roth IRA, utilize the financial calculator in the Resource Center on Busey.com. You can talk to Busey Wealth Management's professionals. They'll help you determine which IRA is best for your savings strategy, whether retirement is approaching or many years away. Busey can help you. Call 1-800-67-BUSEY or go to Busey.com. Busey, member FDIC.
Sarah Champagne's Ben Quattrone on keeping his employees.
It's got to be the place to work. We have to pay the best. We have to treat people the best. Some of the guys wanted to order pizza the other day. Well, we bought 30 Papa Del's pizzas. BMW had the best month they've ever had. They said, can we have a cookout? Saturday, I cooked like 50 ribeye steaks. And they were expecting like cheeseburgers, burgers and hot dogs and stuff. Like, if I'm eating steak, you're eating steak. We both eat steak, we both eat hamburger.
Learn more at sarahchampagne.com.
Hi, I'm Tyler Weaver, president of Carpet Weavers Flooring and Furniture Gallery. It's time to come home to Carpet Weavers. We don't want you to just like your new floors. We want you to love them. From waterproof floors and carpet to furnitures and design advice, we've got a team of experts on your side. We'll get you the best price and the best quality products. And complete your home with furniture and accessories. Buy it all with free financing too. Come home to Carpet Weavers, where floors, furniture, and family meet.
In 1925, a small plumbing company began its journey in Urbana, Illinois. Over the decades, the business grew thanks to hard work and great people. In 1966, things changed when Dave Reichard, a veteran, met veteran Ken Asklin, who was an architectural engineering grad from Illinois. The two realized their shared vision for excellence. Their partnership took root, and in 1975, the name changed to A&R Mechanical. With Dave as president and Ken as vice president, A&R Mechanical expanded services, becoming the go-to full-service contractor for all of Central Illinois. A&R went from a plumbing-only contractor to a full-service mechanical contractor with their own sheet metal shop. Today, A&R is a plumbing, heating, ventilation service company with the same excellence in customer service as they provided nearly 100 years ago. Design, build, and maintain. That's what served A&R Mechanical for nearly 100 years. Find them at Lincoln and Kettering in Urbana or online at ar-mech.com.
From computer systems to brakes and tires too, at PDR, fixing cars is what they do. Remember, when you turn the key and the car won't run, call 367-9481 or use their dedicated text-only line at 383-0619. Additional information including repair quotes and online scheduling requests available from the website at pdrauto.com. Remember, they are what's best for your truck or car. They are PDR.
You've set your financial goals. One kid plans to go Big Ten, the other Ivy. Your bucket list includes seaside sunrises and sunsets on the slopes, or perhaps a second home away from it all. Busey Bank can help develop the right investment strategy to take charge of the years ahead. Busey Bank, building business, growing wealth since 1868. Proud to be the official bank of the Fighting Illini. Member FDIC.
Are you sitting too much? University of Illinois College of Applied Health Sciences PNC Lab is recruiting men and women between 40 and 70 years old with no history of cardiovascular disease to participate in the HIT to Sit Less study. Exercise on a stationary bike for 6 minutes in 30-minute intervals. 3 sessions will be conducted with compensation up to $280. For details, call 217-333-0581. or email pnc-lab@illinois.edu. Help U of I researchers learn more about the relationship between sitting, physical activity, and brain health. In Freer Hall, 906 South Goodwin. Visit publish.illinois.edu/hit-2-sit-less to participate in the Hit to Sit Less study. Publish.illinois.edu/hit-2-sit-less.
Back on the drive with Sam Piper, ESPN Radio 93.5. Let's get to a couple of your texts on the Max Twin City Recycling text line. 651. Yeah, Fran barks a little bit every now and then, but I haven't seen him flip out at all this season. Maybe tonight's the night, or he's put that on the shelf. Who knows?
Maybe.
Brian, is Illinois' defense a scheme thing, or are the guys not good enough defensively?
Combination, right?
I feel like it is. I think it's more about the roster build. If I were to pinpoint one thing, I think you are limited in what you can do defensively, in my opinion, because of the personnel, because there isn't a more athletic team out there, because your 5-man is a guy that, look, you do that trade-off, and Tommy's been a really valuable player, and I wouldn't want to trade him for somebody as far as, looking into the future. I want him back. I want him to continue to be that stretch big and good passer and everything. And you're going to give up some things defensively because he's not going to get out and guard on the perimeter or switch 1 through 5, and you play drop. One thing I was mentioning to you guys off the air is Trent Frazier. One of the great things about him defensively was he was so hard to screen and create an angle where he just had a knack for fighting through them and getting back into position. And I don't feel like Illinois has those guys this year. Kylan's been a really good defender, especially when he's at his best, but he's maybe not, he's more strength based than like completely nimble and slippery like Trent is in terms of his agility. So there's a little bit of a difference there. I think that Illinois could help themselves also with some awareness by some other guys. Like I think that some guys fall asleep off the ball, and that's not a scheme thing. That's just guys, they're young players or whatever it is, mental engagement as far as that goes. But I think, and this is going to be interesting going into the offseason, will Brad emphasize more athleticism or more just defensive prowess in his roster build and give up a little bit in terms of offensive skill or perceived shot making? I know this one is supposed to be a great shooting team and obviously hasn't been. To be a little bit more well-rounded or just be a little bit more physical, junkyard doggy, is whatever the best way to put that is. I've thought about that. I think namely, being there at Madison Square Garden, would it be so crazy? Like there's an older, a few years ago version of Brad that would kill to have St. John's team in a heartbeat.
Nah.
And I don't think he would now, at least, the way he's built his teams and wanted analytics and wanted three-point shooting, wanted spacing and so on and so forth. That's not a very good shooting, if not a flat-out bad shooting team in St. John's from the perimeter. Good mid-range. They're kind of the anti-analytics squad, but they are just tough as heck, top 5 defense, and they've had a great year. So, I don't know. Those are just some things that come off the top of my head.
He's built his last 2 rosters very offensive-oriented, and we went through this last year in terms of question marks defensively, and there was a stretch midway through the season where Illinois was giving up 90 every night, and obviously that team was way better on offense than this team and had a much higher floor just based on the individual talent. But it's been 2 years now where you haven't had a very good defensive team under Underwood. That was his MO as a head coach coming in, was, just the toughness defensively. And obviously he was one of those coaches early in his Illinois tenure where they would play the trap defense, try to turn you over like crazy, one of those. And then he completely adjusted to now what we see, which is as conservative of a defensive scheme as you can play, which I do think has its flaws sometimes, but also I think can be executed really well and mask some individual deficiencies at times, but also I think, just like you said, the personnel on this roster, you just don't have very many good individual defenders, and it's just so hard because this deep into a season, teams are going to be able to exploit your weaknesses. Teams are going to be able to put you in action that they've seen guys struggle with off the ball, or or just exploit the areas that you leave open. And coming into the year, we knew that this team did not have a whole lot of guys that came in here as defensive-minded players, and they overachieved on the defensive end, partly because I think this scheme does have its benefits, and teams were missing a lot of those mid-range shots, and teams were falling into the trap Illinois was falling into, and they're executing the drop well, and now you're just deeper into a season. I think it's come apart, partly because of all the ins and outs and guys missing, and partly because I think teams just have figured Illinois out a little bit and figured out where the weak points are, and there's a lot of them just individually with this roster. And so it is going to be a decision to make of, do you want to have more defensive, not necessarily like, the Sincere Harrises of like it's all defense and boy, it's, he's going to be a Dort candidate for another team on offense because he's that bad. But just guys that are a little bit more defensive oriented and guys just personnel-wise better defensive players. We'll see, because that's not been the approach that Brad has taken the last 2 years now. He said we want to score, and he's talked about publicly offense wins now.
Right.
Will he change that mindset? I don't know if you have to fully change that without also improving your defense or just recruiting the defense a little bit more.
It will be very interesting to see how that goes. I will add on there real quick is I think the scheme being predictable and also lacking aggression is something that is worthy to be criticized. Even if you don't have a great unit in terms of the personnel, the idea that they don't turn anybody over, which I'm not saying you have to, but that's something that I thought this team would be a great transition team. And maybe if you were willing to be a little bit more aggressive in terms of trying to do that as far as ball pressure or another thing I don't always like is they're so determined not to play in rotation. They don't want to help a lot and get caught like trying to fly around. And I know when you have a young team in particular, that can lead to just a lot of breakdowns and miscommunications. And there are other times where it seemed like Illinois should double team a guy, and they refused to. Nick Martinelli was one of those in the first meeting of Booty Ball, and I think that's something that this scheme has it's been too stubborn at times, in my opinion, to not make some tweaks to either throw somebody off guard and give them something they're not expecting, or if there's a matchup that's hurting you, to put two on the ball, when it's Des Claude and ball screens. And again, Tommy's limited, but then again, last year, I didn't think there was any reason Coleman Hawkins should be playing deep drop every possession as a mobile five. I thought that was a bad move and misutilization of Coleman. You could tell me, and it wasn't said publicly, but maybe you could whisper like, hey, the knee was kind of the reason they did that. If it was, then so be it. But I just don't think that was putting Coleman in a good situation, and that's where I stand as far as that goes.
I kind of think if you look into the future, and there's probably not next year, but if there's years where Merez Johnson is your five-man, I would also say I want to see some more aggression, because to not utilize his skill set and also just his lack of height, I don't think, as athletic as he is and as much of a shot blocker as he can be, I think like in a future season, whether that's 2 years from now or what, if Merez Johnson's your guy in the front court, I don't think you can just be playing 100% deep drop coverage, because that would just be wasting a talent and the mobility and athleticism that he brings. So I do think that just making some adjustments and not just being so stubborn in one way of playing, I think would do them good, even if that's still ultimately what they want their base defense to be and what they practice the most. And, especially when you have Tommy, like you don't have much of a choice, because, that's just kind of what you have to play. But just mixing some different things in and trying to throw maybe some different defensive looks at teams, not just being so singular, I think could be of benefit.
I agree with that. Yeah, Merez being able to blitz some ball handlers that are getting going or just really dangerous. You want to force the ball out of their hands. I think he's athletic enough to do that and recover to the big and on a roll, and that's something that you can certainly take advantage of, no doubt. I know we've had a few people text in about Stephen Bardo's tweet and video. We are going to vet that during the break to make sure. I don't think he curses, and I watched it today, but maybe we can get you some of that and react to it. Before we do that, Justin said, I think the key to the rest of the season is Will. Just get him the ball, and he has to start. I think he could be the key. KJ, I wouldn't rule out, obviously, as being that guy. But I think that those two playing off of each other and both being playmakers and both being guys that can do things with the ball in their hands and get shot and make shots are vital going forward. And Will has been, I know the usage isn't as high as KJ, but he's been more sure-handed. He's been a guy that's made less mistakes with the ball in his hands over the last month, really. And I think that's something to continue to double down on and lean into. And, yeah, you mentioned it earlier, and it was pretty like Duke kind of shredded him defensively, but I'll take the trade-off there, and you just live with that.
Because it's not like you have Ty Rodgers or another option where it's like, all right, here's our defensive guy.
Right.
No, there's not a lot of options on that end, so play your best offensive guy because Will Riley's still that guy that could take a game over and win you a game himself, along with KJ. One of those two can do it, so those two got to be on the court.
Could do it tonight.
That'd be nice, and I don't think Iowa's got great matchups for those guys, nor anybody on defense. So
Right.
let's. I think it's a good candidate.
Who's going to have the better game, Will Riley or KJ? Let's put that out to the text line, 217-359-2255. Or if you've got another nominee, feel free to shoot that thing in, and we'll read those before we get out of here and get to our predictions as well. We'll catch one more break, get a little Stephen Bardo, talk about that, and then our final thoughts on Illinois, Iowa coming up next. It is The Drive.
Our friendly sales team help you to find just the right appliance, just the right price.
I'm Paul Reekin, and you know my dad, Dennis, for the famous Wow. Yeah, that's the one. That Wow is a Central Illinois tradition, decades in the making. It's our award-winning staff that puts the Wow in Dick Van Dyke Appliance World. We have in-house service, in-house appliance installation, a knowledgeable sales staff that will make sure you get the guaranteed best deal on your next appliance purchase. Oh, and let's not forget, a jingle that's been around for decades. Just like the quality service we provide. I'll make sure it's here for decades to come. We're the store that makes you say, Wow!
We stand behind what we sell, we offer so much more. Dick Van Dyke Appliance World. When you buy from us, you get the whole store.
Illinois basketball season is underway. Single game tickets to see your Fighting Illini at State Farm Center are on sale now at fightingillini.com. Great seats are still available. Lock in your tickets for big games against Big Ten opponents before they're gone. Don't miss your chance to see the winningest team in the Big Ten Conference over the last 5 years. Be part of the atmosphere and get tickets at fightingillini.com.
Okay, Tim Onstad in charge of Dedicated Diesel and Gil Frericks Trucking. Where are we with Dedicated Diesel?
Yeah, we need to get over to the Dedicated Diesel and get those Dixie choppers out. I am instructing Andy over there, whatever Dixie choppers are there right now, to show people what we have invested in them, what our cost is, go $400 over that, and it's theirs.
When it comes to the mowers, you can really get things done quickly on the Dixie chopper, right?
That's for sure.
Oh, yeah. I cut mine down by about 2/3, going from a conventional garden tractor riding mower to a zero-turn Dixie chopper. Went, from 3 hours down to an hour.
And how do we reach Andy?
You can get Andy at 217-328-0562. Catch him on Dedicated Equipment on Facebook. Email him at abowman, BOWMAN, @gftlog.com.
Not every remodel project is as easy as the couple on the Home Improvement Channel make it look. From old furniture to construction debris, a home remodel can quickly turn into a junk pile. Two Men and a Junk Truck is here to make your home improvement dreams a reality. They offer hassle-free junk removal and dumpster rentals to clear the way for your next big project.
Perfect.
Use code REMODEL25 to save $25 on your next service. Two Men and a Junk Truck, making your home improvement journey a breeze. Visit twomerandajuncktruck.com. Offer valid at Two Men and a Junk Truck, Champaign, Illinois.
NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, is holding a free family-to-family 8-session course, knowing it can be difficult, trying to find strategies and help someone you care about. The class is held on Tuesday evenings from 6:30 to 9 and starts March 25th at OSF Healthcare in Urbana. This course not only is for family members, but significant others, caregivers, police officers, teachers, and anyone who cares for individuals that have mental health conditions. You can register now at NAMIChampaign.org. Habitat for Humanity in Champaign County dates back to 1991, transforming lives by helping limited income families secure decent and affordable shelter with low construction costs, 0% financing, and homeowner education. Habitat for Humanity's work is made possible through generous individuals, faith groups, businesses, organizations, and grants. Plus, additional funding is derived from Habitat Restore. If you know someone with a housing need, the ability to repay a mortgage, and a willingness to partner, consider visiting cuhabitat.org to see if they're eligible for Habitat support.
It's time for spring cleaning, so why not turn your clutter into something amazing? At the Habitat for Humanity of Champaign County Restore, your donated furniture, appliances, and home goods help build homes, community, and hope right here in Champaign County. Call 217-359-0507 to schedule.
Finishing up on the drive with Sam Piper, ESPN Radio 93.5. We'll get you our picks, Illinois and Iowa for tonight. State Farm Center got a couple of votes here. Lon says KJ goes off tonight, 30 points, and Kyle owes me a Snickers tomorrow. All right.
I'm okay with that. Yeah,
you know.
We've been doing, when you've been gone, we've been making some Snickers bets of who kind of like a bold prediction of a guy going off. I'll take that. 30 points from KJ.
I like it. I think Will Riley will have the best game, Justin says. I hope it's Tommy, though. We need the rebounding. He only had 3 against Duke. It's a good point. Good point about that as well. I'm feeling, who am I going to go with? I'll think about it here for a second. While we wait, let's get you some Stephen Bardo. I'm sure a lot of people have seen it on social media. His take on this Illinois blowout against Duke and where the program is at right now. Maybe not big picture, but just this team, the vibes of the team, and what that just massive deficit showed to an alum, a guy that played on a great Flying Illini squad. So if you haven't heard it, here's Stephen Bardo and we'll react to what he had to say.
The reason you would see the Illinois teams in the 80s, the early 80s and the mid 80s and the late 80s, the reason you would see them not lose by 25 or 30 is because they cared. They grew up in the state. It meant something to us and to the guys that came before me to put this jersey on. It meant something. But if you're in Lithuania, if you're in Serbia, if you're in Louisville or Evansville, you ain't thinking about the Illini. You're not thinking about it. Ask Mike Woodson what I'm talking about. Umar Ballo didn't know anything about Indiana, but he brought him off the bench. Kanan Carlisle he didn't know much about Indiana, and he's playing reserve minutes, right? Because Mike Woodson, now that he's being forced out, he's going to coach to win. He's getting rid of the politics. Right? And so there are different teams around the country that are having similar issues, maybe not to the degree that the Illini are, because we pay so close attention to the Illini program. there are other programs having these same concerns. I don't know if they're necessarily issues. They're just concerns. Because if you put on the Illini jersey and you've lost games by 30, 25, 20, 43, worst in program history, smack somebody, hit somebody. You can't let people prance down the lane and live in the paint. That's really the most disappointing part, right? And this is where I'm coming from. It's going to be strong, guys. That's why I want you to tune in. This is strong, and this is from an alum. This ain't got nothing to do with my on-air work. This is from an alum, a former player, right? If you're getting embarrassed and they brought in a walk-on to shoot a 3 over the top of you, come on, guys. I'd have smacked the snot out of his nose to even think about raising up for a 3. Are you kidding me? But I would have been ejected a long time before that we got to that point, because I would have been mad at my teammates first. I might have fought my teammates first. I'm not losing like that.
Good stuff there from Stephen Bardo, and perspective from a former player, guy that is very prideful about that jersey and this team and program, and I respect his insights on that, no doubt. That Illinois didn't show any fight, and that had to be hard to stomach for guys that have been in that uniform, that have built this up to what Illinois basketball is about. So I listen to that, and I take that, and he brings up an interesting point. Now, I think a conversation about how much a guy from where he's from cares about the jersey and the brand and the program, I think it varies. I think that will be something that change. I think the premise is fine. You know, why would a guy from overseas who knows very little about Illinois basketball care as much as somebody from the state? Does that mean that you should go hunting in Chicago every cycle or downstate, even when the talent maybe isn't there? Like Brad Underwood has said, we're going to go where the talent is, and he's had a good amount of success there. I want to circle back to that, but Kyle, I want to throw it to you first and just your thoughts on what he had to say.
It'd make for a very good longer conversation for another day, but I almost think more to it's just the risk you're running with the 10 new guys approach. To bring in an entire new roster, this was going to be one of the drawbacks of that. Not only just where guys are from and not having a bunch of in-state guys, but just not having guys that have been in the program or have built up the pride factor within Illinois, because it's also new to everybody. It's just a new group that's playing for Illinois for the first time. And yeah, I don't think you saw the pride in Illinois or in the team show, and that's where I think you run the risk of, if you have this much turnover in this day and age, because it's hard to do things the old-fashioned way, where it's, all right, we're bringing in, a recruiting class of 5 Chicago guys, like you did in the past. It's just there's so much player movement. You're going to get guys from here and the guys from there. That's every program has that. But I think the lack of continuity is another side of this that I think can apply to a lot of the things he said, which is something that I know has been brought up a lot here recently as, hey, has this experiment failed just because you needed some continuity, you needed some carryover, and you needed some Illinois program guys left over to be those enforcers of, like, we're not letting this happen, because there wasn't that guy. So I think that just goes back to the way that this roster was built, and I think there's some real flaws with it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, no doubt. And we saw it with who Terrence Shannon became. And I think him being an in-state guy, he recognized that was something that means something to him. It, of course, meant even more to him that second year he came back. He had some more sweat equity in the program, knew what it was about to play for Brad Underwood. That relationship strengthens just the strengthened bond with the program, the teammates, and whatnot. So when you have some continuity, like you said, from year to year, got some buy-in in the program, some sustainability there, that can grow. I think a Luke Goody on this team would have more fire, have more we're not going down like this. And obviously he's got some of that at Indiana too, because that's the program he grew up rooting for. So he knows what it means to be a Hoosier as well. The one additional thing I'd throw in here before we gotta get to our picks and then get out of here, but you could just judge, or you try to